Gotta make a meal so I can change and act strange. Get a Andre 3000 wig with some bangs. I'll hang and bang your frame like the Predator do.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Drew Amburgy, and this is the Fastbreak. I'm going to be your host. Welcome to it. This is where we're going to be talking about the NBA. We're going to go over games from the week, and we're also going to talk about some narratives going into kind of the final half of the season here. Well, thanks for tuning into this first episode. I'm joined by Trevor Junt. If you've seen any of Wazoo Sports Network's previous content, you probably saw him on the weekend wrap-up with Trevor Junt, where he talked football.
I am Trevor Junt.
He is Trevor Junt, and I'm Drew Amburgy. So let's go ahead and get into it. One of the games I wanted to talk about this week, basically what I'm going to do is kind of highlight the best ones from the week and the most interesting teams to talk about. So first one, we got Celtics-Wizards that happened on Sunday. Now, the Celtics won 116-87, so not really a close one in this contest. And of course, the big storyline from this game was Jason Tatum's 51-point game. He finished the game with 51, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists. So just really a complete game all around. Held the players he was defending to just 25% from the field. So really just a lockdown game all around. He's the main reason why this one wasn't even close. Tatum scored 51 in just 33 minutes. He went 18 for 28 from the field and 9 from 14 from three-point range, which is impressive because he's been struggling from that range all season, and it's kind of nice to see him kind of get right with that one.
So the previous 3 games, he went 0 for 17 from the arc. So I thought
Yeah,
that was
it was pretty brutal. He was having a really tough stretch. And kind of seeing his comments after the game, I was really happy for him, especially as a Celtics fan as I am, that he was kind of really just able to break out of that slump in a big way. Right now, Tatum is averaging just 42% from the field and 32% from three. So numbers a little bit down than when he normally is, which is somewhat concerning because we're halfway through the season at this point. Celtics hovering right around 500. They're currently playing the Kings right now and up 40, so I'm going to go ahead and say they're going to win that one. So there'll be a game over 500. Right now they're the 8th seed, but they've been playing a lot better the last month or so. So it kind of has people getting hope for their chances getting into the second half of the season. Trevor, do you think, in your opinion, the Celtics should kind of ride with this team, that they're playing better, 7-3 in their last 10? Or should they make a trade to try and flip around this roster because there are some glaring issues with the team?
So, I mean, what I thought right away is like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I don't think you split up that duo. I think they're too good to split up. Like when you have multiple like true ballers on the court, you play better. So, I mean, like look at the Nets. Nobody thought the Nets would work with those 3, I guess 2 right now, 2.5. But it worked. So So I don't know. I don't think you split them up. Somebody I noticed who they could trade is Dennis Schroeder all the time. Like he's a good player, but he's good. He'll be good in the deadline. Josh Richardson. A few things I noticed too is I think they want to go younger, just because that's like what Brad Stevens tends to do. So people like Al Horford, Ennis Freedom. Peyton Pritchard's young, but I mean, my question is like
very limited.
Yeah.
Like ceiling.
Yes. Yeah. And then one thing about the Celtics. So Danny Ainge the past few years, they've been active at the deadline, but they've done nothing at the deadline. So I don't know. I just thought that was notable. And Brad Stevens is coming in. Hopefully he'll make moves. I'm not a Celtics fan, but I'd like to see the Celtics improve, obviously. So I do think they make a move. I have some Celtics fans, like friends, obviously you and just a few other buddies. But like I mean, there's blockbuster names like Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, DeJounte Murray. I don't think that's really realistic. I don't think they have the assets for that. But players like Jalen Brunson from the Mavs, Harrison Barnes from the Kings, or even I heard like I read Duncan Robinson is available on the deadline too. So I think that's a possibility.
I did see the Heat were kind of floating his name out there, Duncan Robinson. Obviously, the biggest kind of name for the Celtics to trade is obviously Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
Because the Celtics, especially in the past, the reason why they haven't been able to make too many trades at the deadline is because they either have guys on really low contracts or really high contracts. So it's really tough to make trades work when you don't have guys kind of in that middle range, which is really nice right now because we're not paying Schroeder too much. Marcus Smart is kind of on an average salary. Jason Richardson. So those kind of guys kind of in the middle area range there. So I do think they have some flexibility to make a trade, but I just don't see Brad Stevens pulling the trigger with something that's not going to actually make them better.
So I think
there's a lot of trades out there like Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
If they do him for Marcus Smart and maybe they throw in another piece, I just don't really see that doing anything, especially when you're taking away.
Celtics pulling in another piece.
I think the Mavs would have to throw up another piece. Yeah, no. No, Marcus Smart, he's been a first-team all-defense guy, and
That's my question.
And he can score when he's on. Obviously, Marcus Smart, it's a roller coaster with him. Some night he's going to make 8 threes, the next night he's going to shoot 0 for 11 from the field.
That is very Marcus Smart.
But a great defender nonetheless, and an effort guy and a heart guy that you kind of do want on your team. So I would be kind of sad to see him go, but I'd understand if they packaged him with something else for maybe, say, a Sabonis, which actually would really improve the roster. I love Domantas Sabonis. He's an amazing player. I'd love to see him in Celtic green. You also did touch on De'Aaron Fox there. De'Aaron Fox is somebody that has really piqued my interest because, man, the Celtics could really use a young, dynamic point guard to complement JB and Jason Tatum as well, too. The biggest concern for them is just finding a point guard who can give you 15 to 20 points consistently, but doesn't necessarily need the ball all the time and can, dish to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and get those guys some open shots.
So that was my question with Marcus Smart. I thought, all season he's been playing well, at least as the Celtics point guard. And again, we touched on his defense. His defense is, immeasurable. It's impactful for the entire game and the entire team. But you said De'Aaron Fox. He's good at defense as well. What do you think they could package with, say, Smart to get De'Aaron Fox? Because I feel like that's a hard trade to make.
That's a tough one. We would have to give them probably some sort of pick here and there. Also with maybe Pritchard. We'd see what else they would want. Maybe a Jason Richardson. I'm not sure. To be honest, it is the Kings, so you never know. You might be able to pull one over on them. You might be able to just do it straight up and throw in a second rounder. Who knows? That's one of the worst run organizations in the league. Heck, the league sends 8 teams, over half the conference, to the playoffs every year, and they haven't made it in, what are we at now, 14 years?
A long time.
That's pretty bad.
That's
pretty bad.
20 fans show up for each game.
It's a tough one in Sacramento, but who really would want to play in Sacramento? I was driving. Sorry, we got some Northern California people that may be in the studio, and no offense, but Sacramento's not the destination that some people think it is.
But yeah, doesn't Shaq own a little bit of the Kings?
I guess
is that
so.
The only thing?
I guess so. What part? What part? Is he doing it on purpose? Is Shaq actively tanking that franchise? I don't know. Just a Laker through and through, I suppose. But yeah, if I had to say so, I think the Celtics are probably just going to ride with what they got right now.
I think so as well.
They're playing better, and obviously Tatum. Hopefully he continues his progression upwards. As I was watching the Kings game this Kings-Celtics game right before we started taping, Tatum had 22 at halftime. So it looks like he has gotten his shot back. And really, the Celtics have lost a lot of really close games this season. just blowing it right in the fourth quarter, losing games by 5 or 6 that they were up 15 going into the fourth. And a lot of that is certain guys just not playing clutch down the stretch. So I think their record could actually have been significantly better, just timely shooting and frankly, Tatum playing like a superstar. Because if he plays like a top 7 player in the league, which he's capable of, a lot of those L's start turning W's, and we're not even having a conversation about breaking up anybody on the team. And they're only a few games out of being a 5 seed. So it's that thin line with the East because it's so It's so compact in the East right now. But you know what? That's good conversation on that. Let's actually send it over to the West. On Monday night, we had the Suns playing the Jazz. And while I didn't think this was going to be a good game at first, because the Jazz actually had no starters.
Yeah, none.
Literally not one starter, not 1 out of 5 starters. 0. You know, Clarkson was playing. I don't even know who else they have on their bench.
Eric Pascal.
Yeah.
Hassan Whiteside started. Daniel House Jr. started.
Daniel House, yeah.
Rudy Gay.
That's
Rudy
right,
Gay.
Gay.
By the way. Yeah, he passed Chris Webber.
Yeah.
For 100th all-time in points scored.
Congratulations, Rudy Gay.
Yeah. I mean, but Pascal and Elijah Hughes, Jared Butler were on the bench, but they played good minutes. Because they did everything.
So it was kind of a crazy game, but shout out to the Jazz. They kept it close. You know, the Suns only won 115 to 109, so pretty close game coming down the stretch there. Amazing game by Booker. He's been awesome this year.
Yeah.
33 points, 7 rebounds, and Chris Paul actually had a season high Monday night. He had 27, 14, and 9. So just an awesome stat line from obviously the future Hall of Famer. The Jazz were led by Clarkson with 22. So, you know, like I said, you know, Clarkson, great sixth man.
Yeah. Probably
Probably could start on a lot of teams in the league. Just shows how deep the Jazz are. So not a surprise to see him with 22 there, really. Suns, 7 wins in a row. Best record in the league by 3.5 games, which is impressive, over the Warriors, who have started to struggle a little bit recently. Yeah. Jazz are 2-8 in their last 10. Now, of course, like we said, they've been dealing with a lot of injuries lately, so you got to take that with a grain of salt, of course. But in your eyes, Trevor, are the Suns clearly the best team in the league and going to the finals again?
So before we touch on that, I do want to say Chris Paul was 1 rebound away from that triple-double.
I know.
Man. 18. He would have had 18 in his career, but
Close
that
enough.
was cool. But anyway, on the Suns, Vegas says they're like the 4th best chances.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the desert says. But you know, the desert's not always right. So I mean, I don't know. The first seed Suns. I mean, Chris Paul and Devin Booker. That backcourt is terrifying. Mm-hmm. If I'm any team that has just okay defense or even good defense, I'm still scared. You know what? Because I mean, Devin Booker can score from anywhere. He's also like I watched this game. Mid range, he was shooting wild. Mm-hmm. He looked like Michael Jordan shooting in the mid range.
Yeah.
It was wild. And Chris Paul can obviously dish it to anybody. But they're really deep as well. You mentioned the depth of the Jazz. I mean, they have Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, JaVale McGee, Elfrid Payton, Landry Shamet, and apparently Bismack Biyombo.
I know. How about that?
Yeah.
I saw him get a dunk, and I was like, Bismack, let's go, baby.
He scored, I think, 14 on this game.
Yeah.
And then Monty Williams, he's their head coach.
Awesome
One
job.
of the best in
Awesome
the league.
job.
Yeah. I think they're absolutely talented contenders. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're the best team in the league because when the Warriors are playing hot, the Warriors obviously just look like the best team in the league, you know? So yeah, that's what I question. But yeah, I think they definitely have what it takes to go to the finals and even win the finals.
Yeah, and of course, almost everybody on that roster has the experience from last year.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be scared of anybody, especially when you got Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Jay Crowder. I mean, those guys are some dogs. Like, they're not going to get scared about anybody from the Warriors coming at them. Warriors obviously have been a little bit shakier. So, I mean, the Jazz are trending in the right direction right now. We got a long ways to go, though. I think the Warriors, you still got to have them in that conversation right at the front, because even though they've been struggling, obviously we've seen with teams who have added a piece, it kind of takes a second for everybody to mesh. So when they added Clay, the record hasn't been great since then. But I think it's just going to take a second for everybody to get used to, especially when you were so locked in and cohesive like the Warriors were, and then you bring in, you know, a future Hall of Famer and guy in his prime. It's going to shake things up a little bit. Guys got to get used to their minutes, less shots, more shots, you know. So it's going to take a second. But I do think the Jazz are going to be right there trying to go back to the finals, because I think as long as Chris Paul stays healthy, you know, I think they have arguably the best depth in the league. And the thing that separates them from the Jazz, are the superstars. Like Donovan Mitchell is not on the same level as Chris Paul or Devin Booker, and Rudy Gobert is not on their level as well either. So while the Jazz may have the same depth as them, the Suns' stars shine a little bit brighter when it matters.
So the Jazz are the 4th seed right now. What I thought, I think Donovan Mitchell can score with the best of them, to be honest.
Yeah, he can.
Yeah, he can score. I mean, he can make not super well, but, feed the ball. But Rudy Gobert, I think I know it sounds silly because he gets top 3 in the defensive player of the year every year, but I think he's one of the most overrated players in the league. But I think the Jazz could be in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
I don't think they're final contention. If you're thinking the Jazz are good enough, what do you think about the Grizzlies?
So I think the Grizzlies are a dark horse, a real dark horse to make the conference finals. Now, if Memphis was able to get to the conference finals, I just don't know if they would have enough to compete with the Suns or the Warriors. Now, I think Ja will go head-to-head with anybody. I could see him making it a very good series, maybe even pushing it to 6. I think he's a gamer. I think he could go in there and average 30-plus a game in a 7-game series with any of the teams in the West. I just don't know if they have the rest of the team that can compete with, like I said, the depth the Warriors, the Jazz, and the Suns have. But I do like them. I do like them, though, and I think they'll definitely win a series in the playoffs, potentially 2. It is going to matter about matchups and obviously health. And can't even rule it out with COVID nowadays. You got to be careful about that as well, too.
No, truly, I'm thinking about the superstars, too. Mm-hmm. Who's the second best player on the Grizzlies? Jaren Jackson Jr.? Dylan?
It's either Triple J or Dylan Brooks. And it's when you compare that to Clay, Chris Paul, or Devin Booker, however you want to rank those guys, to me, they're kind of 1A, 1B.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty big drop-off. I just think Ja would be able to keep him in it, steal a couple games at home, maybe 1 or 2. But, yeah, I just think in a 7-game series, especially maybe against the Suns and Chris Paul, they're just going to figure out a way to just dominate.
I think they're losing that game, yeah.
But I love what Memphis is doing right now. They're hot. They're kind of one of those teams where the collection of their parts are better than, the sum. Or however that quote goes.
I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
They're better than they should be.
They're kind of bringing out the best in everybody right now because they're all kind of just feeling it. They're young. They're kind of better than they're supposed to be right now, which is always exciting. And you can really get the best out of players when you kind of got that, youthful innocence to them, which is what I see with Memphis a lot right now. So, yeah, I like Memphis a lot, too. I just don't think they can hang with the big dogs in the West. All right, well, those are the 2 games I wanted to talk about with Trevor. It's been awesome, man.
Yeah,
thanks for being on the initial show of the Fast Break.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, thanks, man. We are going to have on Damian Alvarado in just a sec to talk with another game here. Stay tuned.
Man, listen to what's going on in this song. You got self-titled, you got Magic Most, some superstar-ish right here.
Welcome back. I'm now joined by Damian Alvarado. He's coming on to talk about Heat Lakers. I wanted him on because he is unfortunately a Lakers fan, so we got a little bit of beef going on right now. But what's nice for me is I picked a game that the Celtics won, and I actually picked a game that the Lakers lost. So that's kind of a fun one for me.
Tied for those 17 rings, though.
Yeah, that's true. Well, 5 from Minnesota.
Aren't the records similar as well?
Yeah, we're right about
500.
I know we're right about even. But you got to keep in mind though. Remember 5 of those titles are from Minnesota, so not sure if you really count those. But on Sunday,
I don't think anyone's beating the Celtics 8 straight. I'm gonna put that out there. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that'll never happen again. Well, back in the '60s, when there was only 10 guys who were actually good at basketball. They were smoking cigarettes at halftime and eating ice cream immediately after the game. So It was a little bit of a different league back then when the Celtics were winning 8 straight titles. But all right, the game we did have on Sunday, Heat Lakers. Heat ended up winning 113-107, so it was a close contest. Duncan Robinson for the Heat played, first of all, he played 42 minutes, which is kind of crazy. And he had 25 points. Jimmy Butler with a 20-point triple-double. He's been having always a solid season as he does. Bron, of course, 33 points, 11 rebounds, just another day at the office. And Russ with 24, 9, and 9. So almost a triple-double for the triple-double machine. Lakers, though, what sunk them in this game was they only shot 27% from 3. And the Heat shot 45% from 3. So if you figured that those averages kind of came a little bit closer, the Lakers probably would have actually had a pretty good chance to win this game. Now, Bron. Let's go back to him. He's averaging 32.5 points per game over his last 17. One of the best offensive stretches of his entire career, which is saying something. Can adding AD make them a contender again if Bron still plays this well?
Well, I think bringing AD back will obviously have an impact. How soon, we don't know, as he's coming off an injury.
He's actually, let me interrupt. I see that he is going to play tonight. We are recording this on Tuesday, so he's going to be back tonight. So.
I also want to point this out. I know we're all guilty of this. We're watching the Bills and Chiefs game, so I know many Laker fans might have been elated by the 113-107 score, but it was actually not that close at all. Lakers were down by 26 points at one point in this game. And, you know, like I said, like anyone would say, like, wow, it was a 29-17 Heat team as a Lakers team that was 23-23. It's like they played pretty well against the number 1 team in the East, but they actually did not. Like you said, you brought up LeBron's stat line. He's been carrying this team. How much better do you want him to be? I don't know how much more you could ask of the guy. Other guys have to step up for the Lakers, and they're not doing that at all. So with AD coming back, you would hope he fits right into their offense as Frank Vogel has implemented the small ball lineup. So you would hope he just gels right in. But even before this, AD was breaking shots. He wasn't able to stretch the floor as well as he did in that 2020 run. So we do not, Lakers fans and including NBA fans, we don't know how good AD will do, to be honest, coming back.
No, yeah, that's one of the concerns for me as well, too, is, I mean, he wasn't really that effective when he was in the starting lineup. But I will always say that I think adding Anthony Davis, even if he's not playing full Anthony Davis style, is going to be an upgrade on the roster regardless. So I think it will give them a bump. Hopefully, you know, he's taking this time to kind of work on his body, get a little bit more maybe in shape. I think personally he needs to slim down a little bit. I think he needs to be playing like, you know, more of a Giannis body style and less of like a trying to beef up a little bit and play like, you know, kind of a statue center. I think he needs to be running the court, doing what AD was doing when he was in New Orleans and slim down, and that's also going to take away some of his injuries. We've seen throughout his career when these big guys put on weight, it tends to lead to injuries for them. I think AD hopefully he's going to slim down, you know, play more of a Giannis type style where he can actually get out, dribble, and beat you to the hoop off of the dribble. But I think it's going to help him. How much, I don't know. I still obviously think the Lakers are going to make the playoffs. I think when it really comes down to it, Bron will just stay in God mode and keep going for it. One other question I have for you and the Lakers is this Vogel's fault? Because what I've been seeing out of the Lakers camp is that, you know, they're going day by day on Vogel to see if they're going to continue him to be the coach. Now, for me, my opinion is that it's not. I think he's been dealt a really awkward team to deal with, a lot of weird pieces, traded away some good defensive players, some good young talent, and gave him Melo and Russ and Bron, which is a weird combination to work with. Do you think Vogel should have been able to figure it out by this point in the season, or is he just getting blamed unfairly right now?
Yeah, and that's a point a lot of people have made. Whether you blame it on Vogel, Rob Pelinka, Westbrook, right? It's everyone's pick and choosing what the issue is. I think the real issue is defense. None of these guys want to play defense. You have a lot of veteran-type players who are not doing the dirty work. As such players in the past, you had guys like Danny Green, Caldwell Pope, JaVale McGee, who were all on that 2020 championship roster team. They don't have those guys no more. LeBron James is a player who's doing the dirty work now, and he shouldn't be that guy. That's not supposed to be your guy that's doing that. So, yeah, we could blame it on coaching. You could try to blame it on Westbrook, which, to be honest, I don't blame it on him. I think defensively, yes, he could pick it up, but so can the other guys. But like you pointed out, his stats for this game, 24, 9, and 9. And, yeah, his turnovers kill the Lakers once in a while. I mean, quite a few games here and there.
Yeah, it cost you a couple times there.
I think the Lakers' issue is defense. They refuse to play defense, whether it's the rotations, wrong switches, or trying to help too much. I don't know if it's the veteran mentality or like the superstar, like I could do it all type play. But I really think Lakers' issues lie in defense and trying to make those hustle plays. I mean, and I don't know, if you want to blame Vogel, maybe starting Ariza. I'm not too sure how much help he brings. He's a little bit older. And honestly, I know the Lakers brought him in for perimeter defense, and he hasn't been the best at that this year. I mean, the Heat scored 11 points 11 3-pointers in the first half.
Yeah, the Heat were lights out from three-point. You're not going to win many games when you allow the other team to shoot 45% from three. Now, yeah, I think you do bring up a good point that, you know, defense has been an issue for them all season. Caruso, amazing defender. He's played great defense with the Bulls this year. Caldwell Pope. Hell, even Kuzma is, you know, sometimes he's a little awkward looking, but man, that guy works his butt off.
Like I said, they miss shots.
Rebounding, getting those
good
defensive rebounds. And, you know, just full effort from Kuzma that we've seen with Washington so far this year. Obviously, losing Caruso was the big one. That hurt a lot. I don't know why they wouldn't try and match the offer, but they didn't, and it's costing them. And now you have a bunch of veteran guys who we've seen LeBron take off defensive possessions for a while now. Guess what? He's got 4 rings. He can do that. He's allowed to do that. Russ doesn't have any rings. You know, I don't know what he thinks. You know, we see him sometimes just look absolutely lost on defense or not trying 100%. I don't know why he thinks that necessarily would be okay. Now, maybe you can blame that on Vogel, that he's not necessarily getting the maximum effort out of his guys when, you know, at 500, you need to at least be trying. You know, you're not coasting at a 1 or 2 seed right now. And then, of course, having AD out doesn't help on the defensive end either. He's an amazing defensive player. But, yeah, defense is really hurting them. And when your entire team isn't playing that good at defense, even LeBron averaging 33 points a game, there's nothing you can really do about it there. Now let's switch it to the other side. Let's talk a little bit about the Heat. Can the Heat get back to the finals? Can they repeat the bubble year? They're the number 1 seed right now, and the Bulls have been struggling heavily lately. And the Nets, you know, obviously they've got their injury issues and off-the-court issues and whatever that may be. Now, we all think that they're probably going to get that together by the time the playoffs start. But do you think the Heat are a contender to make the finals again, especially with Milwaukee out there?
Yeah, to be honest, I think the Heat are contenders, Drew, and I'll tell you why. You have Jimmy Butler, who's been phenomenal ever since he's gone to the Heat. Eric Spoelstra has been able to rotate his guys to where his starters don't see the floor as much as Butler and Adebayo. They're not on the floor at the same time as much as other teams have their starters. And another thing is it just shown like the blessing in disguise of Tyler Herro's being hurt, and so is Kyle Lowry, because it's shown how much depth the Miami Heat have, and that's allowed other guys to flourish and get more playing time. But like I said, I think Miami Heat, they play off of like a grit and grind style. They really are able to move the rock, get the ball move the ball and get it to their guys. And I really like the depth of this team, and I feel when you look at teams like the Warriors or even the Suns, they have that as well. And, you know, Lakers don't have that. Yeah. So when you look at the Heat, I think, you know, if they're able to put it together like they are now, the number 1 in the East, I think they do have a shot at being a title contender.
I think so, too. And you touched on it. The depth is what really comes into play in the playoffs. I mean, we see it every year again where, yeah, you might have the best 2 players on the court, but when those 2 players are off and your bench gives up a 20-5 run, that changes the entire game. And I like the Heat, and you can't rule out the factor that Spoelstra makes with the Heat as well, too. I mean, you arguably have the best coach in the East as well. And he's been with the Heat, obviously, since the LeBron days. I mean, I trust him over Budenholzer. I trust him over Steve Nash. Now, Steve Nash might be a great coach, but he's also, he's very new to this thing. No matter how experienced he may be, obviously, with his playing times with the Suns. And I'll take him over Ime Udoka with the Celtics right now as well, too. So I do think the Heat can get back there as well. They're going to have to stay healthy. Need Hero, need Lowry, of course, because that just makes them that's when their depth is almost unbeatable, when they have everybody healthy. And, like I said, the Bucks have some heat as well. The Bucks have some heat. The Bucks do have some heat. Hey, honestly, Giannis has some heat. But, the Bucks have a lot of heat, a lot of offensive firepower. Now, the Bucks have depth, too. And you look at the Nets, they don't have quite the same depth that they necessarily did last year because some of the role players haven't been playing as well as they normally do. So I do think the Heat are going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals just because I don't necessarily trust the Bulls yet. And they got a lot of pieces that haven't been there. And then you got the Bucks, who they just don't quite look right yet. Now, Giannis could go on a tear, and we could be laughing at ourselves for even having a conversation with anybody else making it out of there. But I do like the Heat's depth, and I'm just not sold on the Nets yet. So I think the Heat could easily make the conference finals. And you know what? If a couple things go the right way, the ball bounces their way, so to say, I think the Heat could find themselves in the finals again. They're definitely a team to keep an eye on for the rest of the season. The East is going to be interesting because nobody's running away with it like in the West where the top 2-3 teams are well ahead of everybody else. In the East, they're all kind of jumbled in together. So it'll be interesting how coming down the stretch.
And I know you bring up the Nets as you're not sold on being a title contender. You feel, with like you guys mentioned earlier, the 2.5, Kyrie being out with his COVID vaccination status, and then James Harden recently stating that he's probably looking to move into free agency. Do you feel the dysfunction there is part of the reason into why you don't think they'll be a contender?
Yeah, so with them, it's more mental.
Right.
And that's where I think a team like the Heat could break them in a playoff series. Because obviously, on paper, should be the Nets. And I'm talking like title, anybody in the West, Nets. I mean, you got Kyrie, Kevin Durant, James Harden on the same team with a couple of good shooters as well, too. And I like Claxton as well. On paper, of course, they should easily go to the finals. They should sweep through the East. But like I said, Kyrie, he might not be able to play half the playoff games. Harden doesn't necessarily look like he's quite in shape, and he's still great, but he still kind of looks like he's lost a step. Kevin Durant is kind of the exception to all the craziness on this team. He just goes and hoops, and he's going to be amazing. I have no worries about him. But yeah, I can't confidently make a prediction that the Nets are going to go to the finals because they have so many just off the court kind of storylines and issues, and I don't know who's going to be on the court for them when they're in the playoffs. So the Nets are a tough one to decide right now. That'll be something we'll have to monitor kind of as we get towards the end of the season to see, if they're going to have that full roster going. Because if that full roster is going and they all buy in, Nets all the way. Cool. All righty. Well, thank you for Damian for coming on. It was fun talking little Lakers Heat there. Well, thank you guys for tuning into the first episode of the Fast Break. I am your host, Drew Amburgy. You can follow me on Twitter at Amburgy_Drew. And Damian, shameless plug.
Damien Alvarado_.
Cool. All righty. Check out our YouTube channel, Cable 8, Wazoo Sports Network. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.
I was gonna go platinum.